The Healthcare Security Cast is sponsored by 3D Network Technology. 3D Network Technology. Reliability is our core value. Visit www.3dnetworktechnology.com. And by Genetec. Genetec, delivering security strategies for healthcare. Visit www.genetec.com. That's GENETEC.com.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast, the podcast dedicated to healthcare security, safety, and emergency management. If you are involved with a healthcare security program or desire to be, this podcast is for you. Join the conversation as we discuss the issues that matter to healthcare security professionals while leveraging the expertise of healthcare security thought leaders and experts in personal development. And now, here's your host, Brian Hamilton.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast for Tuesday, May the 26th, 2020. Today is the first of 2 video episodes for this week. And moving forward, we will be transitioning to having all content in both video and audio format. In the meantime, we will have a mix of some of these video interviews as well as the pre-recorded audio content that we've already prepared. Stay tuned for updates by connecting with the Healthcare Security Cast community, Facebook, and LinkedIn pages. Also, feel free to connect with me on social media. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you'll be notified when new videos are released. And now for today's show, we're joined by Jonathan Westall, and we're going to just jump right into the show. Hope you enjoy. All right, welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast. We're joined today by Jonathan Westall. Jonathan, thanks for joining us.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Now, I always like to start off by getting to know a little bit about the guest. So obviously, I know you pretty well, but for everyone watching or listening, who's Jonathan Westall?
Weird question, I guess, but kind of a mix of mostly work and IAHSS lately. But so I'm 34 years old. I live in Los Angeles, California. I grew up Boston, Massachusetts, and gradually kind of worked my way west. Security has kind of always been my career. This is probably the first time in my life where I haven't been 100% security focused. Grew up in a pretty regular family, you know what I mean? I got a younger brother who's about 18 months younger than me. Not married, no kids. I'll get there eventually, but I'll let you handle that whole family planning for now. You got enough for both. I joined the Army not too long after high school. I was assigned to the United States military prison in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, where I was correctional officer. I did that for 4 years, and that parlayed into a position with a company used to be Corrections Corporation of America. Now they're called CoreCivic. They're a private contractor for federal, state, local detention centers, halfway houses, basically anything around the Department of Corrections from an overarching U.S. and individual states. I was assigned to a California contract, so I worked in a California state prison that was contracted out to this company in Arizona and Oklahoma, with them for about 4 years. After that, I moved to Los Angeles, where I took a job. My first job here was teaching, which was a little weird, teaching at a junior college when I was 27. And most of my students were at my age or older. It was definitely not where I saw my life going as a teacher, but more power to anybody who can teach too, because trying to wrangle people off cell phones and have a conversation about doing homework and stuff definitely is eye-opening. From there, I went to work for Sony's PlayStation division, and I oversaw their physical security program for the U.S., and then a couple small sites, Canada and Mexico, and then trade show stuff in Brazil. But that was kind of my first foray into like a corporate type security. I did safety programs there too, where Sony would essentially buy up these independent studios when they would make a successful game, and then we'd have to roll out and implement the program at these one-off facilities around the country. Some of them be sales offices that had 25 businessmen there, and then the next day I would be at a game design studio which had 3 computer programmers in board shorts with multicolored hair and a bunch of face piercings. And then the next day be on a plane to a studio in the middle of the northwest corner of the U.S. where there's craft beer on tap in the break room. It was very interesting environment, different person every day. It was a good job. It really kind of gave me a breadth of experience around corporations' tolerance for security and how different sites have their kind of independent and different needs. From there, I moved on to a security manager job at Huntington Hospital in Pasadena, which was my first healthcare security gig. 678 bed level 2 trauma center in a very mixed area of Los Angeles. Historically, a very wealthy area, a lot of grand homes, about 100 years old. But as times changed, you had a whole section of the east side of the city that was very different, lower socioeconomic status, a lot more gang activity, a lot more security issues. And those all kind of melded together at the hospital. From there, I was there about 3 years, eventually took over all the support services. And after that, I came down to Martin Luther King here as a vice president of ancillary services. So I oversee basically all the non-clinical supports, the lab, a few other things. Lately, it's just been basically command center, as I think we all have some COVID stuff going on. It basically occupies our day. So I think that's me in a nutshell. I have 2 turtles, Cyrus and Franklin. That's as close as I'm going to get to pets in a small Los Angeles living space.
Awesome. Now, as far as your transition into healthcare, did you have any, well, not even necessarily healthcare, just your career overall? Do you have any mentors, and what have you learned from them that you still apply every day?
I think it's kind of weird. My career has come kind of full circle, right? So when I left the Army, the prison that was being built in Arizona had no staff, no nothing. It was trailers out in the middle of the desert. They were building it. So I got 9 people from my unit who were getting out of the military to come work at that prison. At the time, the housing market had kind of crashed, and not kind of, it really crashed here in the U.S. So I bought a pretty big house in Arizona for next to nothing and essentially rented out rooms to all my buddies getting out of the military and got them jobs at the prison I worked at. I met my first boss there was a guy named Mark Reed. You know him through IAHSS. And I was 23 when I had that private prison. And Mark, first boss, kind of, people don't think about this, but every prison has a Joint Commission accredited hospital in the U.S. because it meets our patients many times. There's traumas, but there's also normal medical conditions that everyday people have, as well as same in prison. So that was kind of my first foray into healthcare security, because I learned about accreditations, inspections, and different patient rights. You're an inmate who essentially has been stripped of all liberties and rights, but as a patient, you still have certain rights. So it's kind of a balancing act. So Mark kind of guided me there through my career there. I'll circle back. I got to pay him back a couple years later. And then when I went on to work at Sony, my director over the worldwide director was a guy named Steve Kelly. Steve Kelly was mostly a real estate and finance background, but Steve kind of let us run the security, the folks who knew it, which was great. But he was a huge supporter of professional organizations, associations, certifications, continuing education. I have a master's in law enforcement administration, so I didn't think I was going to go on to a doctorate, but I didn't know about things like ASIS, IHSS, and certain security organizations or professional organizations that had their own board certification exams. And Steve really pushed that, which was Sony funded it, get reimbursed for certain tests and classes, which was great. But that's what got me into a lot of the FEMA stuff, the ICS classes. A lot of the certifications I got were during my time at Sony because I had a boss who really supported that. So I've tried to do that as I progressed up the ranks too, that when someone wants to better themselves, and it's also going to better your organization, that you shouldn't ever hold it back. You can always cover the shift. You can always find someone who's willing to work the schedule. So then as I went on to Huntington Hospital, it was my first, like I said, first healthcare security. I knew about professional organizations. I didn't know if there was a healthcare one. So I did what everybody probably the last 15 years has done, is I Googled healthcare security associations, and up came IHSS. There was a small Los Angeles chapter, only a few members, but I found a guy, Kavika Feltman, and Darren Morgan, 2 people who've been involved in IHSS for probably 20 years between the 2 of them. So I looked up Kavika Feltman, found out he worked at a hospital down the road, and blind emailed him, and my phone rang immediately. He got me all the information for the next chapter meeting, and I was kind of hooked there. Darren Morgan was also always a calming voice. If anybody's ever met Darren's a very polished man. He walks into a room and he knows what he's talking about. If I ever wanted an attorney to represent me somewhere, law degree or not, it'd be Darren Morgan. And he was the kind of the guy that I could text him or call him anytime. So at this point at Huntington, I promoted up to a director over kind of all the non-clinical services, and I need a security manager. And I remember I'd kept in touch with Mark Reed over the last few years from the prison system, and I knew he'd be successful as a healthcare security manager. So called him up in Arizona and got him in on the Huntington job out here in California. So brought him out. And it was a good way to pay back a mentor, somebody who'd been there kind of helping me through my career, to be able to give him an opportunity. The one I knew he'd be successful at, but also, let's be honest with each other, anything's better than going to a prison every day. And that gets old. And then when I got into IAHSS, you have certain people there, these very different personalities who have worked at different organizations. I work at an extremely busy hospital, busiest in Southern California. But in the grand scheme of things, it's a small hospital. It's 131 beds with a 21-bed ED. Now, I see what some of the 1,000 beds see here through that same space, but in the grand scheme, I'm not some massive system. So meeting people who worked at these big systems or a variety of other organizations kind of opened my eyes to it. Kevin Toohey out of Boston, whose mostly background is safety. He's got some security too, but a safety guy who understood policies and procedures. My first annual conference, watching Jeff Young speak. First of all, he's the first Canadian guy I met in healthcare security, and Canada's healthcare and U.S. healthcare is night and day. It's a whole different, the way it's run up there and the way it's run out here. Both systems seem to be working, so no complaints. But it's night and day. And to hear Jeff Young get up there and speak and have, he understands business. Like, to hear a man speak who, he's a security guy and he gets cameras and card readers and guards and new technology and all that, but he understands how this you need to cover your expenses. You don't have to make a certain profit, but you need to be business minded with it. So that interested me. And then you meet people, Martin Green. Martin Green runs, a 1,000-bed long-term care facility. I didn't even know that was a thing until I met Martin. And he's his own personality too. So you got a different kind of foray into each. So between, like I said, Kevin, Martin, Jeff, these are people who've made big impacts on my career, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's I can share a lot of those same people as mentors with you as well. I actually worked with Martin for a year and a half at Baycrest. So
I'm sure that was interesting. Interesting every day.
Oh yeah, interesting every day, different every day, and so sometimes Martin forgets the stories that he tells you, so sometimes it's not different stories every day. But 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 you enjoy the stories nonetheless.
It could have been it could be not talking to telling you stories.
Oh yeah. Hey, it could have been trust me, it could be a lot worse than working with Martin Green. Martin Green's great, and he had a huge impact on my career as well.
That's cool, man. That's cool. And that's what I like about IAHSS, or like just the organization in general. The chance I'm ever going to meet a healthcare security director for a large long-term care facility in Toronto, I'm not going to bump into that guy, walking down the street. Kevin Toohey, I grew up in Boston, but I'm not going back there anytime soon. I'm hooked on the Los Angeles weather, but the idea I'm going to bump into him it's not a real thing either. So I think it brings people together who all have some, at least common goals, maybe not common work situations, but common goals.
Absolutely. And just actually wanted to park there on IAHSS for a little bit. Now, obviously both of us are board members. Can you share a little bit about your experience being a board member and just in volunteer leadership in general?
So I think volunteer leadership it should be mandatory for every leader. We all have made a decent living, more than a decent living at times, in our professions. And we didn't wake up with knowledge and experience. Somebody gave that to us. And somebody gave that to us not ever expecting anything in return. Because the guy who was the security director, who's now a CEO somewhere, the idea that I'm going to call him with some groundbreaking idea is probably not going to happen. So I think we owe a debt. I think that across the board, and I'm a firm believer that in life, but especially in your professional life, we all owe a debt. Nobody owes us anything. We owe back. I live a very comfortable life provided by my job. So I think it's only fair that I give back to someone who wants to be in my position. When I don't really interview security officers anymore, but when I meet them, I usually go to all the new hire orientations and welcome everybody in who's going to fall under my structure. I always want the security officer who either wants my job or wants to be a state cop or a correctional officer. I think we should never be content where we're at. We should always be moving forward and driving to get better. And I think volunteer leadership is a great way to do that. You should be grabbing new people and saying, hey, come to IAHSS, come learn this, come do that. If Kavika Felton hadn't returned my call or hadn't given me the info on the meeting, I not that it was a bad job, but I'd probably still be the security manager at Huntington. Because I was still figuring out the ropes there. So I think IAHSS is great because it's a tight-knit group. Yes, we're across two countries, or some other ones too, but mainly two countries. It's coast to coast, thousands of miles separate us. But I had an 8 o'clock call this morning with Kevin Toohey where we were just going over what some of the safety and cleaning procedures he's doing in his lab. It's a much more sophisticated lab than I have, but I'll adopt some of those here. But to be able to make that call, or we put in a thermal imaging camera here, which I think was one of the first in the U.S. to do it. We're getting calls from guys that I met in Chicago or, and speak at something or just pass on that knowledge. So the idea that you have to pay for something or go out and buy something when you're part of this organization, that's not it. You can pick up a phone or shoot a text message. And getting on the board, I think, has been a great experience because we all of us who are moving up in management look at something and say, I could do that better. That's good, but I could do it better. So I think board leadership is a chance to leave your mark and make an impression or implement some of the ideas that are important to you. If it's important to you, it's probably important to at least a few of the other members.
Exactly. Now, I'm going to share a little bit about my story when I actually got elected to the board and I got the call. I remember it was, I believe it was November 2nd. And I remember it was like, I barely ever get sick, but for whatever reason this day, I felt horrible. I didn't go to work. I had to call in sick. And I just remember getting woken up actually by a phone call from Martin Green telling me, I've got some bad news for you.
I got that same
I was
call.
like, okay, great. So this is Martin, right? He says, you were successful and you were elected to the board. So you've got a lot of work ahead of you. I was like, all right, thanks, Martin. He's like, okay, well, the story will go out soon. We still have to reach out to everybody, but probably by Monday, you'll be able to share with everyone that you were successful. So, I hang up the phone, I fall right back to sleep again, feeling horrible. And then my phone just starts going off. So I guess he made all the calls and, the story was out the same day. So my phone just started ringing and, social media was going crazy and pinging. So that was my experience finding out that I got elected to the board. Now, do you remember getting the call from Martin as well? And
I did. Like? I was at the, what was it? The American Hospital Association's leadership conference. And I get that number and I'm like, I can't have that number. I'm like, oh. And nothing against Canada, but I don't know a lot of people up there. So I got the call and it was the same deal. I got some bad news for you. And I'm like, I was running against a much more established healthcare executive. He had been in the business a lot longer. And I was kind of like, it's worth a shot. You know what I mean? I'll be around again in a year or two. And his bad news was that now I was on the board and I needed to get to the board meeting in Chicago that December, where it was like a polar vortex and record lows of -30 or -40. And I'm like, this is what board leadership is? Like we can go anywhere in the country to have this meeting. We have board representation coast to coast. And we've picked Chicago, Illinois in winter during record colds. I was like, well, I guess, all right, I'm in this. But no, it's been great. And I remember I get there and Patrick Lewis, I'm the secretary now. Patrick Lewis is outgoing secretary. And I've never met Patrick before. I knew who he was through, websites and being at different ACNEs. But he pulls up a chair right next to him and goes, you need to just sit here and I'll give you the whole rundown. He's got every meeting that's ever happened for IAHSS on a thumb drive. And I'm just kind of shadowing him. And we only had like a day and a half, 2 days together, but he basically, he took care of me right there on the spot, which was refreshing because I'd never, I've been on boards before, but more at the local level or statewide boards here. But this is the first time I've been on a board at an international level or even a national coast to coast where you have members from all over the place calling you for information or want an update or with a tip or something they want to discuss. So it was intimidating at first for sure, but kind of easing into it now, I think. I hope.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, you're doing a great job from my standpoint. I love how quick the minutes come out. So.
Well, yeah, I hate being late to anything. Literally, it's my biggest pet peeve. And when something sits in my inbox undone, I think about it all weekend. Like I can't not like have it just sitting there. So that's like, oh, let's get these minutes done, get them out.
Awesome. Now, just with the current strategic plan and everything that we're doing as a board, what excites you most about the direction of IAHSS?
I like that we're turning the corner and getting all our educational materials online. I think that's mandatory. The concept of that someone's going to order manuals, maybe a study guide, because I prefer to still, I have like an e-reader and stuff, but I prefer to still buy a hard book and read that way. You know what I mean? But when you want to take study materials and take tests, I think our whole educational component is what excites me. You have the study materials and tests that you can now do online. With the CHP accreditation, now I think that opens our conferences and our educational stuff to a much wider audience. When people can get CEUs, they can count towards like their nursing stuff or some of their other boards or other certifications they have. I think we appeal to a much broader audience. And that's just where I'm talking about like America and Canada. But now when you have something online, like it's not far-fetched that another country could now start a chapter with our materials. But when shipping books to Europe was going to be $10,000, that's not even real. And it's not even, we could say all we want that, yeah, we're talking to Europe or we're talking to a country in South America, we're doing this, we're doing that. But when it's web-based, we really can be a part of those countries. We really can expand our organization and get much bigger on an international front. And let's face it, the people who fund like our ACME trips or some of these other conferences, organizations, or our group certifications, those are our C-suite folks, the decision makers, and we need to get them interested in IHSS. And if they're not interested in it, or if they don't see a benefit in it, then that's it. It'll just be us driving against the wall. You need decision makers who see value in the organization too.
Absolutely. And I think one of the strengths that you have over there is that you've been able to really establish a great program at your facility. And you've done some of that through IAHSS. So I'm just going to ask you, actually, I'm just going to give you a chance to brag a little bit. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your program? I know you've received some recognition through IAHSS, both as a team and some of the individual members as well.
So I got a great director here. Mark Reed, CHPA is our director over here, support services, which is essentially our security. And I think a huge benefit is security is my background. That's my baby. If I get a chance to, sit down and go through a security program, that's what I want to do. If there's an award to win for a security program, that's what I'm looking for. We were program of distinction last year with IHSS. Mark was the campus safety director of the year last year. What else? We've got numerous accolades from the sheriff's departments here. ASIS won their best program award at their international conference. FEMA's come out, which is our Department of Homeland Security folks have come out and given us a bunch of awards for that. It's our program is a model program. One, I have an organization that supports it, which is great. The funding behind it to get new technology and the right training for the right staff. But luckily I get to sit in those budget meetings. You know what I mean? I get to dictate where some of the funds go. Kind of the perks of the promotion sometimes, where nothing against my lab director, but when my lab director comes to me and says, I need this, this, and this, I'm like, yeah, okay, that sounds good. But when my security director says he needs something, I'm excited about that because that's a product I know. That's a product I like. I know what the results of that are going to be. So Mark may have a little easier time convincing me, but also a harder time too, though. The lab director can pull one over my eyes because I'm like, yeah, whatever you say, bud, that's what we need. Or the security director, I'm like, well, I know that. Like, I don't know that. But yeah, we've had a very successful program here at MLK. Definitely. like I said, I think that goes back to the quality of officers we can hire and the leadership in the ranks. All of our supervisors, all of our assistant supervisors, they want to promote. They're out there doing the HICS classes. They're out there doing the FEMA classes. They're out there getting their CHPAs and their supervisor level certifications. So they all want to be in Mark's role. They all want to be in my role, which I think is key to a successful program.
Absolutely. And you mentioned your officers. I believe a couple of years ago, if I remember correctly, one of your officers, I think his name was Mike, received some recognition.
Yep. He was the security officer of the year and got the Merit or Merit of Valor. I can't remember which, but yeah, for an incident here it took place where we had a patient who got a rope and attempted to strangle one of our nursing assistants, and Mike kind of came around a corner, caught it, and ended it pretty quick. So it was good. No harm to anybody. So it's always a win. No harm to anybody.
And I want to circle back now again to one of the things that you mentioned earlier. You're talking about some of the technologies that you're leveraging during this pandemic. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and how it's impacting your facility?
Yeah. So I'm lucky in the fact that I'm in a relatively new building. So we have some good infrastructure, and it's not super difficult to add and do some construction. Where I know some of the other places I've worked, 150-year-old buildings, you can't just put a card reader up. There's a little more to it. Yeah. But so some of the stuff here, we've done the Alcatraz AI technology, doing the iris scans. They basically, the idea with COVID, right, and the big fuss around COVID is clean hands. You want to always be washing your hands, which people are, but you don't want to touch doorknobs. You want keyless entry. So the idea that everybody has to wear a badge, but when you're grabbing your badge every day and hitting this, hitting that, tapping this, tapping that, it's a lot of touching there, and your badge hangs and it swings and it hits this and it hits that, and you know, you're in and out of restrooms with your badge on. In theory, you're never taking your badge off when you're at work. You know, you're eating around it. So just being able to do some of the facial recognition stuff where you just walk up and the door's unlocked, and then you shoulder bump it or you elbow it and you're through. I mean, it's better. The less surfaces we touch, the better. We also implemented a thermal imaging camera at our front lobby, which I know it was the first in Southern California. I think it was one of the first to be operational in the U.S. in a healthcare organization, where we're getting everybody's temperature reading as they walk through. It's been great. It's been hugely successful. We're getting calls all around the country. People want to come out, demo it, test it, do a walkthrough, give us contacts how we can get one. I know Cedar Sinai right now, just north of us, is installing one. Last night they installed it, and I think they're going to go with 10 more around their entrances. But basically it puts a green and red box at a certain temperature threshold. We use 100 degrees because the sort of the California Department of Public Health guidelines. So it singles out anybody walking in your facility who's over 100 degrees. We pull them aside for secondary testing. If they still are over 100 degrees, then we send them home or tell them they can't enter the facility. So it's all in mitigating the spread or preventing as much of the spread as possible. And we know temperature is a good indicator. So that this is a quick and easy way for mass amounts of people to walk through one door. It reads up to 16 people at a time. So you don't have to stop and get red, stop and get red, stop and get red. If folks just walk right through, it doesn't impede their day. So those two, probably the Alcatraz and the thermal imaging camera, have been two of our biggest successes as of late from a technological standpoint.
As far as the technologies that you mentioned, both Alcatraz and the thermal technologies, do you see, well, I guess Alcatraz would probably be the most appropriate, but do you see that as something that's going to be ongoing? Is that now a permanent part of the program?
Yeah, so the Alcatraz stuff that's hard mounted. That's not going away. That once that's in, that's in, and I see every year during our capital budgeting cycle expanding X amount more, X amount more, X amount more. And then, like I said, eventually, I mean, ideally, it'd be great to get it across the board. I think that's probably a little far-fetched at this point, but at least all our main entranceways and access ways. The thermal imaging camera, I think worldwide temperature monitoring is going to become more the norm. I don't know where we're going to go with like who's excluded and who can't come in, or what the threshold for temperatures are going forward after this pandemic kind of dies down, or what. I said I think those are still up in the air, but I don't see it as unreasonable that temperature monitoring is standard practice. Some of these cameras too, they have a lot of analytical components to it too, where you can pick up, you're trying to track a guy in a red shirt who you know stole a laptop off the 5th floor. You can identify the red shirts that came in and did. So there's some other components to it which we haven't operationalized yet. Our focus was get it up quick and get the temperature readings accurate. So that's our first few steps on that. But that'll be a permanent fixture, whether it's the temperature part or the analytic part. We also do a visitor access system where everybody stops, takes their photo. Their badge is an expiring 24-hour badge with a photo on it and where they're supposed to be. So comparing, like I said, if we're tracking a bad actor at the hospital, we can compare with when they logged into the visitor management system with when they came through on the analytics camera. So we've kept the systems separate for now in the interest of time, but I do see an integration in the future once we kind of are back to more of a normal operation.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool to be able to work with a technology that, like I said, one, you like, and two, you luckily we're in a financial position where we can implement some of this stuff and we can get it going. I know there's some organizations out there that it's just not an option for them, which I'm blessed to be in the spot I'm in. I can't complain.
Absolutely. Now, just speaking of actually where you are, watching you on social media, I see a lot of stuff that you're posting on LinkedIn, and you're obviously overseeing support services. And I see you spending time with a lot of the frontline staff, which is awesome. A lot of times, even in the appropriate uniforms, doing certain tasks. So that's cool that you do that. But one thing I wanted to ask you about was there's a program that you participated in, the Odyssey STEM Academy mentorship program. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So it's always a running joke in my office that it looks like a dry cleaning store because you have a whole rack of every uniform for every day of the week. I try to do 2 hours with every frontline department every month. So if that means it's cleaning rooms one day or cooking meals the next day, it also helps me understand when people are coming from, we can't do this or we have to do it this way. Why? I don't know. I've never been a line cook. So now I go do it in 2 hours. I'm not going to learn everything, but I'll understand a little more when people tell me can and can't do this. Odyssey STEM program it's an alternative high school in Los Angeles where students go 1 week to school and then 1 week they follow a mentor. So Francisco is my student. I have another one coming whenever school comes back, or if school comes back, I guess. But his mother's one of our housekeepers here, and they have to be paired up with a same-sex role model. So she was looking for a male in a professional position. His last one was at the city office where he did like real estate and valuations. So he would come in every other week for 4 days that week, and then there would have to be some sort of project. So then he would follow me and shadow me and kind of take some notes on stuff. Then also he had to be working on a goal at the end to somehow better my organization. He chose environmental footprint, which is very timely because we had just started a few different programs here, small scale, on reducing our carbon footprint, our waste. And basically what he was able to do was like ascertain some electrical savings, some water savings, with putting on some low flow heads and to changing out our light bulbs to reduce the kilowatt hours used, as well as resourcing and sourcing a bunch of different alternative materials for, our dining area, our Starbucks that we have in-house, and how to reduce the tonnage of plastic that the hospital would use a year. Sometimes I don't think we realize that we're segregating our own little departments. When you look at a healthcare organization as a whole, there's so much disposable single-use plastic. And from an infection control standpoint, that stuff's great. From an environmental standpoint, not so great. So I think you got to strike a happy medium or find a balance there. So the STEM program was great. Francisco came. He graduated at the end of last year. Now he's moved on to another mentor. We still keep in touch once a month or so. Shoot me a few texts. Let me know what he's up to, what he's doing. It was also a chance for me to see things through. Francisco is 16 years old. He's going to be a leader someday. It's probably 20 years from now, but he's going to be a leader someday. And at some point, I might be a senior leader where he works for me. Heck, maybe I might work for him, depending on how career twists and turns go. But it gave me a chance to see something through an entirely different generation's eyes. The companies I came up in were more for-profit companies where the bottom line and the dollar was very important. Not that it's not important, but he's more focused on environmental sustainability, where some of the companies I worked for, that was not even you didn't even think about that. So it was great to get a different perspective, especially a perspective of somebody who's going to be a decision maker at some point. He's gonna run the show somewhere someday. So that point of view will sway strong in that organization. So I think it's as much beneficial for me as it was for them. But it doesn't take no time either. I don't understand why not everybody should do it. You know what I mean? So you got a guy who follows you around 4 hours a day in the morning. It's really not that hard. Like, you know, he literally just wants to see what it's like to be in a professional world. They do all the work. You know what I mean? The data gathering, the stats, his project. I didn't do anything with that. You know, that was 100% his. So it was. I'm looking forward to the next student and doing it again.
And it's interesting. You speak to the point that Lisa Terry brought up the other day on the show when we were talking about diversity and inclusion and just having those different perspectives and, you know, how you can leverage that and benefit from that. So
100%. I think that's the biggest plus to the organization I work in now. I came up working in a prison system thinking that my career, I was going to be a prison warden somewhere. And now I'm a healthcare executive. I didn't see that coming. I'm good with it, but I didn't. My senior director of the emergency department was a flight nurse who worked on helicopters and just did traumas, only traumas. That's it. My current CNO is she was rehab. She worked in long-term care and physical rehabilitation places. The first CNO that hired me here, she was the CNO for WebMD when they first came out, which a very atypical path for a CNO. My CEO here, before working at a hospital, she'd never worked in a hospital before. She was chief medical officer of LA Care healthcare plan. So I think like when you get those type of people together, that you get so many different opinions and so many different points of view that the final product, it's unexpected, but surprisingly excellent. I think excellent.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you about to this point that you'd like to discuss at all?
Well, one, I appreciate you having me. I watch all your shows. I think it's great that you started doing this and getting a lot of the people you've interviewed are people I've known like throughout my career, whether it was healthcare or before healthcare. But the perspective you put on it and the wide range of people is great. But I think for anybody who's watching this who's not an IAHSS member, there's nothing to lose. Get involved in your local chapter. Do something. You know what I mean? Get involved. You don't have to run for the international board. You know what I mean? But become a member. Participate in the discussion forum. I think the membership's like $120 or $150 a year. The Los Angeles chapter has done pretty well financially the last couple of years. So if someone needed a sponsorship, please reach out. You know what I mean? The money's not there. I'm not getting a bonus at the end of the year for this. Mark is our current LA Orange County chapter chair. He's not collecting a paycheck out of this. We need to invest it back in the members. So I think the main message is get involved. You know what I mean? You might be a second career retired law enforcement officer who's a security director and you're just looking to keep it status quo for the next 5 or 7 years, which that's cool, but you've dozens of security officers watching you and following your lead, and somebody's going to take your position. So make sure we're all setting a good example for the folks who are coming behind us. And I think the best example you can set is being involved in something that doesn't pay you, but allows you to pay back.
Awesome. And any closing message for the Healthcare Security Cast community?
Oh man, everybody should be watching this, but if you see this, you probably already are watching it. I hope we get to do the AC&E this year. I hope we all get to see each other. But I mean, as we all know how the world is right now and travel budgets and hotel closures, I mean, I'm not holding my breath. But I hope we all get to see each other next year. And it's stay in touch, reach out between LinkedIn, social media, you know what I mean? Email, text, phone calls, whatever. I mean, it's easy for us to stay in touch. This isn't 1840 where we're sending smoke signals and a letter takes 3 months to arrive. You know what I mean? You can text me right now and get an answer in 3 minutes. Say hi. You know what I mean? Let's not forget about each other.
Sounds good. And yeah, this is refreshing. It's really good to see your face and actually to have this conversation. And you kind of alluded to it there, but best ways to connect to you, LinkedIn. What else?
LinkedIn. Yeah, John Westall on LinkedIn. My email is jonathan.westall@gmail.com. You text me or call me, 213-808-9952. Like I said, those are probably your best ways, but I'll get back to you quick. So reach out.
All right. Well, thanks for taking the time today, Jonathan. I appreciate it a great deal, and I really enjoyed the discussion.
Hi, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And I think we got like 8 or 10 more board positions to do together before we get off. So let's keep this going.
Let's do it.
Go.
And this concludes another episode of the Healthcare Security Cast. Thanks for joining. Join next time when we're joined by Derek Arcuri from Genetech on our sponsor spotlight. In the meantime, stay safe and take care.